Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Lido Loca. My name's Tony. I'm your host today. Thank you for joining me for this conversation. Interesting conversation today. How to be happy during a pandemic. I've got 5 things for you to try. Not our traditional conversation, but I feel very compelled to make this video, and I would ask you to join me for this short journey. Happiness. Let's pursue it. Here we go. So let's start off with some context. You and I have been having this conversation in this format for almost 4 years. And I know very few of you. The only way I know you guys are through your words, through your comments on these YouTube videos. And fortunately, we can discern a lot of things by reading each other's words. We don't get the full picture of the conversation, but we do pick up on things. We pick up on happiness. We pick up on sadness. We pick up on joy. We pick up on despair. We recognize when people are grieving. We recognize when people are hurt. And all that plays out in this virtual dance that you and I have been doing, like I said, for the last 4 years. It hit me like a ton of bricks yesterday that we do live in such a tumultuous time. We've spent the last 11 months or 8 months or 6 months, whenever the apex of the uncertainty hit, we've been dealing with uncertainty for some period of time now, and uncertainty in the world, uncertainty in the culture, and just reading the comments, the level of despair is up. And as I was contemplating that despair, as I was contemplating your despair, my despair, the challenges of the world, again, this compulsion came over me. What are some things that we can do to pursue happiness in a pandemic? How do we pursue happiness in the face of despair? Let me quickly answer the question, should you pursue happiness in the face of despair? Yes, you should. You should pursue happiness in the face of despair. Have you ever been mad at your significant other but completely in love with them at the same time? Have you ever been disappointed at a child but still loved them unconditionally? Have you ever been sympathetic toward a stranger? Human beings, humanity, it's a wild ride. We are able to live in different emotional states seemingly all at the same time. So do you have to live solely in despair? No. Can you live solely in happiness? Probably not. It's just not the way the world works. We are beings who experience multiple things at the same time. And at the end of the day, it is how we manage those different things that really is the totality of how we feel about life. So to me, the magic for how to be happy during a pandemic is you have to figure out how to balance happiness and despair. That's going to be the simple thing. How are some ways that you can balance happiness and despair? The first technique I would say is you have to manage your inputs. We're living in a time like no other where on a moment by moment basis, we are challenged to process information right in front of our faces. The trouble we get ourselves into is sometimes we get locked into only certain inputs. Sometimes we get locked into only negative inputs. And so we get this perspective that everything is bad. You know the way it works. You get a negative input in your brain. It ruminates there. It gets down into your emotions. And now you're convinced that everything's bad because all the inputs that you're taking in are inputs that tell you everything is bad. One thing that you can do if you want to balance happiness and despair is balance your inputs. You may be saying, well, everything out there is negative. Yes, sometimes everything out there is negative. Where do you get positive inputs? You get positive inputs from people that love and care about you. You can get positive inputs from your faith journey. You can get positive inputs from art, from comedy, from philosophy. There's a lot of places where you can go to seek out positive inputs, but the seeking out is really the key for balancing happiness and despair. You got to shut the spigot off of only negative inputs, and you have to go seek positive inputs to balance that out. Number 2, you have to manage your grief. I've been challenged during this whole pandemic multiple times by people saying, don't you know that people are dying because of this or that or the other? Don't you know that people are grieving? I don't think there's anybody out there that doesn't know that people are dying and that people are grieving. Here's one thing that you've got to internalize. The world is so large. There are so many people out there that even at your best moment, at the best time of your life, at your wedding, at the birth of your children, at any positive adventure, any good time that you've ever had, somebody somewhere is having a bad time. It's the way of the world. There is highs and lows, and we all don't experience them at the same time. And so you have to manage the grief. You lose the ability to balance despair and happiness when you take a single data point like the fatality rate for the virus, and that becomes the only thing that you are connected to. We have the ability to grieve with people. At the same time, we have the ability to celebrate with people. We exist in these multiple planes. So while we never discount the grief of others, while we never disconnect from the tragedy that's going on around us, we do not make that the sole thing that we base our life philosophy on. Because if you do, it swings the pendulum to despair and it just sits there. And the simple reality is things are always bad and always good at the same time. It goes back to this concept of striking the balance between despair and happiness. Number 3 is you have to practice empathy. Empathy is basically walking a mile in someone else's shoes. We are connected. We are meant to live in community. Even for people like myself that are somewhat introverted, somewhat reclusive, I do have to have people that I interact with. I am built to be in community, and in community you have to practice empathy. At the big macro level, we have to be empathetic for people that are grieving. We have to say, wow, even though I'm not affected by this tragedy or this loss, I know what that feels like. I understand the pain of loss. And when we look at somebody that's going through a tragedy, we should look at them as if we are going through it and be empathetic in that way, opposed to cold about it. You see people looking at people going through crisis and acting like that could never happen to them, or that they will never have that same pain or that same emotion, when in reality, the likelihood of having that same pain or that same emotion is very high. The challenge is sometimes we just want to fix people's problems instead of understanding what they're feeling, and practicing empathy is more about understanding how people are feeling and connecting that way than fixing problems. The number 4 way of how to be happy during the pandemic is to take care of yourself physically. I've not done a great job of this during the pandemic, and some of the depression that I've experienced over this time has been related to how I've treated my body physically. You can go a couple ways. The way that I move into despair is I tend to abuse substance, and the substance that I tend to abuse is food. So I feel the pain of depression, I feel the pain of despair, and I fight that off sometimes by eating. And then that brings a whole nother level of depression and despair. As you go 5-6 months into this, you're like, wow, I'm even less healthy than I was during the beginning of this thing. And now that's a whole nother level. The body is meant to be in motion. The body is meant to be cared for. There's a lot of physiological things that happen when you eat right, when you exercise, when you sleep enough, when you take care of your body. The body responds in a positive way. When you don't take care of your body, it responds in a negative way, and that can be a vicious cycle. If anything, tactically, try to start taking a walk once a day. Get outside, get some fresh air. Be careful of what you eat. Be careful of the substances that you may abuse. Having your body in the right place helps a lot when it comes to balancing despair and happiness, because the health of the body has a lot to do with the health of the brain, and that's where a lot of the magic happens. So take care of your body, the brain will follow, and it will help you balance despair and happiness. And the 5th thing on my list, take back some control. The pandemic, like I said, it's a period of uncertainty. Uncertainty, just another way of saying that we don't have any control. Most of us like to have some sort of control, and in the absence of control, everything seems desperate. So you have to figure out where you can take control. A simple technique to take control is just to have a daily routine. Take some of the components from these other things that we've talked about. If you know the positive inputs that you want to rest on a daily basis, whether it be something that you read or a piece of art that you look at, make some time for it specifically. Do you do prayer? Do you do meditation? Do you just have coffee and read the paper? Make that at a set time. Exercise at a set time. Just get yourself a daily routine. It doesn't have to be exhaustive, but if you have an hour a day where you're completely in control of what you do, then at least you start to build some blocks of normalcy in an unnormal time, in an uncertain time, and it will quell some of your anxiety. It will move the despair happiness meter. Again, that's what we're trying to do. We're just trying to live a little more on the happy side than the despair side, and getting back a little bit of control will help you in that process. It's tough times. There's a lot of despair out there. There's a lot of pain, a lot of sadness, but happiness is at our grasp, and I think we can pursue it. I don't know who this video is for today, but I hope you got something out of it. This is Tony with Lido Loca, and man, just take care of yourself, and I hope to see you guys again real soon.